2 billion barrels in my own backyard. It's amazing. And on paper, the proposition was very, very, very compelling. But the most compelling part really is the chemistry, I think, with David and the board. I think there's an enormous alignment there. And as David says, it's time to make this pivot, and the energy is there to do that. And I think we're ready to do that.
All right, welcome back inside our proactive newsroom. And joining me now is David Hobbs. He is the executive chairman of Pantheon Resources. And David, good to see you again.
Great to see you, Steve, as always.
Yeah, and also joining us is your brand new CEO, Max Easley. And Max, it's nice to meet you for the first time. How are you?
Very well. Likewise, Steve. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good stuff. Max, we'll talk to you in just a second, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity for David to sort of address, I guess, what is a natural transition that companies go through, and you'll be moving from executive to non-executive chairman and obviously appointing this new CEO. So this is something that a lot of companies do, and it's the right timing for this now, David?
Absolutely the right timing, both from a business perspective, but also from the perspective of the people involved. And before I say anything else, I'd just say we owe Jay Cheatham a huge debt of gratitude for what he's put into the company over the last 17 years. We wouldn't be where we are without the efforts that he's made and the grit that he's shown during all of that period.
Yeah. Max, maybe you could talk to me a little bit about your background as you take over as the CEO. I know you have a quite extensive background.
I do. It's over 30 years now, Steve. It seems like a moment in time, but it's been 30 years. My origin, without question, is Alaska. So I was born there, I was raised there, went to university there, and also learned my trade there as a petroleum engineer at the Great Prudhoe Bay field at a very interesting time. Because ironically, hopefully, maybe unfortunately, my first year was the year that Prudhoe Bay went on decline, which, as you can imagine, was an incredible set of activities. What a learning experience for me. But BP was very good to me. I worked all over the world, all four corners of the world, and depth and breadth, technically, commercially, leadership. A phenomenal time at BP. I shifted gears in 2016 and entered the unconventional world. I'm an offshore guy up to that point. And it's an interesting thing in 2015. I knew nothing about unconventionals, but I was actually in very good company because the entire industry knew nothing about unconventionals in 2015. And unlocking that and driving capital efficiency and growth was a phenomenal experience. And then I got to do it again here in Canada, working with PETRONAS in a much more highly regulated environment, but the same exact result. A lot of growth and great capital efficiency. So a phenomenal 30 years. I've loved every minute of it, Steve.
Yeah, I can imagine experiences like you had at BP and also there at Petronas as well has given you sort of a great stepping stool to take over this position with what you're seeing at Pantheon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so what did I take away from all that? At BP, that's really where my depth and breadth comes from. Every aspect of the upstream business, both technically and financially, in a lot of different environments. But what I learned with Apache is how to execute at pace and at scale in North America. It's very different than in the offshore environment. And again, here in Canada, can you do the same result in a highly regulated environment with many, many stakeholders? And the answer is absolutely.
Yeah. David, maybe you could talk a little bit about the process of finding Max and why you thought he was the right person to take on this role.
Well, you've sort of just heard part of the reason he's the right person, but let's take a step back. We have got a plan for a listing in the US and filing registrations and that sort of thing over the coming period. And at the same time, Jay had been planning with the board when he might be looking to retire. And so the juxtaposition of those things meant that we began a search last year to find the right person, and Jay and other members of the board were part of that search process. We met some stellar candidates. Max was in the end the best of some extremely good choices, but it didn't hurt that he's Alaskan born and bred, that his experience, particularly in the unconventional space, and then doing it again in the cold, maybe not quite the North Slope, but northern British Columbia is not the least hostile environment on the planet. And most importantly, I think a huge alignment with what it was that we were trying to achieve. And I have to say, we felt very comfortable with Max. We were delighted that he was prepared to accept our offer to join as chief executive. Delighted to have Jay around during the transition, remaining on the board as a non-executive, and for me to be able to begin then stepping down from a, even though it's technically been a part-time executive chairman role, there have been times when it's felt a good deal more than that along the way. So, that's really the driver for it. What I would also say is, from a business perspective, if you think back 18 months ago, we were in a position where we just recapitalized the company, but really only enough to keep the lights on. We were able to re-enter and test and improve frac design in the Alkaid 2 well, which demonstrated that the resources had the commercial potential that we thought they did. But we didn't have any of these new leases that we have in the east, where we've just built the Megrez well, and to the west, where we believe we'll have the best quality acreage in Kodiak. So we had created clarity on our strategy, but we hadn't really been able to execute on it. Over the last 18 months, we've been able to shore up the perceived financing by doing the deal with AGDC that will hopefully lead to a gas contract that provides project finance capacity. So we've strengthened the outlook for financing enormously. We've strengthened the perceived commerciality of the resource enormously by applying for the last bits of acreage that we wanted, that have the highest quality reservoir, and we've proved that proposition with the Megrez as well. And so the business is really ready for that next stage of transition, and who better to take it forward than Max?
Yeah, Max, is that what really pushed you towards agreeing to take this job? Was just the opportunity that the company is presenting now, and all the things that it's done over the last 18 months?
Well, I'll tell you, Steve, what got my attention at face value, 2 billion barrels in my own backyard. It's amazing. And on paper, the proposition was very, very, very compelling. But the most compelling part really is the chemistry, I think, with David and the board. I think there's an enormous alignment there. And as David says, it's time to make this pivot, and the energy is there to do that. And I think we're ready to do that. But for me as an individual, to go full circle after a 33 international career and give something material back to my home state of Alaska was a huge appeal.
Okay, and lastly, David, just on how do you take the company from developer to producer, and I imagine there'd be a lot of news flow as regards to that over the next year and a half to two.
Well, there's going to be a lot of news flow over the next 2 weeks, let alone the next 2 months or 2 years. We've got our AGM coming up on the 12th of March. We'll be sharing details of the testing program as we look to get back on the well. So we will have a lot going on at the operational level. We'll have a lot going on at the corporate finance level. We'll be finalizing the gas sales agreement. And once we've got the financing lined up, and we've got the development planning sorted, and we've got the regulatory approval process firmly underway, then really that's in Max's wheelhouse to take us through that development and into production and long-term production growth.
Yeah. Final word from you, Max. What can people expect ahead?
Oh, I think David summed that up very well. But as you move from exploration and appraisal into development, into operations, what you really should expect to hear is activity followed by good results. And that's what you should expect from us.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Max, great to meet you. Good luck on the job. We look forward to more conversations together.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. And David, as always, great work and good to see you.
It's great to see you, and hopefully, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, Steve, to see a little bit less of you as you spend more time with Max.
There you go. Max Easley, the new CEO, and David Hobbs, rather, the executive chairman of Pantheon Resources.